So, are you looking to find your purpose, or are you struggling to hone it down to where you really have a good idea what your purpose is? Well, today I'm starting a 4-part series in how I found mine. Now, granted, I didn't invent this. I discovered it, but I also know that it's been around for a long time, this process that I do. And it's not necessarily something that's going to drill down deeply for your purpose, but it's a start. It gets you going in the right direction, all right? So it's a 4-part series, and today I'm starting with the first part. And so what this is basically is breaking up activities you do now or have done in the past or would like to do in the future into different categories, into different groups. And the one we're doing today is talents or gifts. What are your talents? You know, you probably in school have taken tests to figure those out. And as we get older, we discover a lot of them on our own that never would show up on a test. And anyhow, what are talents? These are naturally occurring things that you have that you may discover or you know right away that you're good at. It's easy for you. You know, some people find singing very easy, even though they've had no lessons. You know, some people are very good at jumping. You know, I remember in school doing track, there were some guys that were shorter than me that could jump higher than I could. It's a talent, and you can improve them with practice and training, but for the most part, you're born with them, okay? So to illustrate talents, I'm going to give you some of mine I've had. Hopefully that'll help you discover yours or find yours as well. So anyhow, what this is, we're going to list these, we're going to discover these. So I'm going to start with mine, and then we'll talk about what you need to do at the end to work on yours as well. Okay, one of my talents and one of my passions, although I don't do it anymore, is drumming. I used to be a drummer. And the talent that I had compared to my peers is I had the ability to hear music or listen to drumming or even just watch drummers and being able to replicate what they do. Now, drumming does have, or percussion does have sheet music. If you're into music, you know what sheet music is. And sheet music for drumming is quite a bit different than from other instruments because we're not using notes. We're using, you know, drums, cymbals, things like that. And I learned to read that back in the day, and trust me, if you put one in front of a sheet of music in front of my face today, I wouldn't be able to figure out what it is unless I practiced it and relearned what's what on there, because I haven't used it in years. In fact, I haven't had a pair of drumsticks in my hands for over 10 years. But I'll tell you one thing, that if I did pick it up, I could figure out the song, and mostly rock. You know, my generation, that's what we listened to, was rock, and I liked hard rock. But I knew I was limited as well. Even though I had the talent, there are certain things I couldn't do. There was guys that, some of my peers, that not only could they read the music really well, and they had to practice that music in order to play it, but physically they had some talents that I don't. Now, one of the things that some of these guys had that I didn't have is a knack for speed. Like, for instance, holding a drumstick, you know, you can move it so fast, right? With practice, you can get a little bit better. You can get a little bit better, but there is a limit. And some of these guys, I tell you what, they could probably do a rhythm with one hand just as well as I could do with two hands. I mean, they were fast. I don't know if it's twitch muscle or what can be attributed to it, but they were fast. And some of these guys, you know, playing can also do things like coming up on a cymbal to hit it, as opposed to how we're usually trained. You come down, you strike it from the top, you strike the drums from the top, the whole bit, but they could do all sorts of fancy things. And it wasn't necessarily something they took lessons on. It's just that a knack that they had. So what I used to do when I played is when I practiced at home, I would get some music out, and I'm talking about back in the day of vinyl or on tape or whatever, put on a big old muffin headset and listen to it, and I had the ability to get away from the other instruments in the recording and get right to the drums. Now, granted, I didn't have a drum set that was huge. I mean, you know, some of these guys use gongs and all sorts of things. But there are ways that I would listen to that and I could figure out, number one, the rhythm. I could figure out which drums and cymbals they were using. And within a very short period of time, I could play it. Now, could I write it down in sheet music? No, that was not my thing, but I could do it. And my ability to focus on that could be my ADHD, if I think about it now, but I could focus on it so well that I could completely eliminate the other instruments. I could hear them, but my focus was very keenly, very sharply on the drumming. In fact, I could do it to such a degree that, you know, at night when it's dark, turn off the lights, lay down on the floor, I could put the muffins on, listen to heavy metal, hard rock, and I could fall asleep. I could meditate to it because I could focus on that, and it was no longer noise. You know, when you think of rock and roll, it's noisy. I can trim all that out and just focus on the playing of the drums, and I just fade away. That was a talent. Now, like I said, I haven't played in 10 years, but I can probably pretty much guarantee you, if you gave me a drum set, a pair of sticks, and a headset and music that I knew, you know, it's not something way out there, that I could start replicating what they did. You know, I could do it within a few hours, start practicing and playing, and you would be amazed at that. I'm amazed at that. What else is there? It's one of my other talents. Do you know the game Tetris? It's a Russian game that came out, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s. And it's a game to where, a video game, where different geometric shapes would come down from the top of the screen, and they're made up of little squares. And the object is to try to maneuver it into an area where it would fit down, and when you get a full set of those rectangles or squares all the way across the screen, I guess, it would cause them to disappear. And so whenever you wipe those out, you got points. So it was something I really enjoyed doing. It was pretty mindless. It kind of helped me focus and relax. But I found that even though I don't have the ability to multitask, and that's a whole different discussion there, not about my ability, but what multitasking really is. I can get into an environment that requires multitasking, you know, phones ringing and people coming into your office, you know, busy. And I would just lose it. I couldn't shift gears quick enough. But the weird thing about this game is I could. I wasn't all that great at playing the game, but I found a knack. I found a little gift that I could use. I had the ability by playing that game, or when I played that game, I could hold a conversation with somebody and not say, hold on a second, let me do this little movement here. I would just be playing and we could have a conversation, and it was an advantage because it distracted them. It didn't distract me. Why I had that ability, I don't know. Some of our gifts we never find a useful use for. I had it for Tetris, but nothing else. And I've known a few people who could do stuff like that. When I was working in computing, when I first started, I remember there was a systems programmer, and he would sit down at the console. And system programmers weren't necessarily for doing coding for specific applications. It was kind of like the whole system, you know, like scheduling jobs when they're supposed to run, things like that. It was a higher level of programming. This guy was phenomenal. Not only was he really good at what he did, but you could go over and, like with Tetris, for me, I could go over and talk to him and ask him questions, and his fingers are going 1,000 miles an hour typing stuff, clicking here, doing that, and he could hold a conversation with me. It just blew my mind. Everybody that worked there just couldn't understand how this guy could keep typing and holding a conversation. I don't know, what's the neuroscience on that? I have no idea, but that's a gift, okay? For him, it was a gift because he was able to do two things at once, okay? Now here's another one I had, where it came from, as far as being able to leverage it for something else in life. Not really. Maybe if I became a crime scene investigator or worked for the CIA doing investigations or research, maybe it would come in handy. I don't know. But I remember in college when I had roommates that I had this uncanny ability to know that someone had been there since when I come home, I knew that my roommate was home, had been there and left already. Now, the usual things were there, like a dirty dish in the sink, a piece of furniture moved, open up the fridge and there's some food, some leftovers put in there, or, he didn't close his bedroom door, things that are obvious to most people. But it got to the point to where somewhere subconsciously I noticed something different. And I do use that ability now and then, but there's just something off. And it becomes more intuitive. And I remember one time he came home and I said, did you come home earlier today? He says, yeah, how do you know? I said, I have no clue. I don't know. There's something different about the room. You touched something and I just knew you had been here. And it freaked both of us out because I really couldn't nail down what it was. So that's a gift, that's a talent. What I could use it for, I don't know. Now here's one that really came in handy when I was taking chemistry class, and I used it my whole life, is that if you know molecules or you know chemistry, you look in a book or you can get a little, I don't know what they're called, but I call them puzzles. You can hook things together, like this object, this round thing is an oxygen atom, and this is a hydrogen atom, and you get little sticks and you stick them together so that you can give a display of what an atom looks like, okay, or what a molecule looks like. And I learned that a lot of people didn't have the ability to do that in their head and rotate it, to actually move it around in their head, in their mind. So I could rotate it and say, well, on the back it's going to be this here, that kind of a thing. And trust me, when I was in chemistry class, they came in really handy. The downside is I can't draw a stick figure to save my soul. So trying to draw something that's in my head, forget it. Because I'm a visual thinker, that's just how I work. But I don't have any ability to get it out other than words. So that was one. And it came in really handy when I was in class and when I've done things since then. What I've done, I did some drafting back in the day when they had drafters. You're the one that draws the picture of the house or the floor plan of something. I was really good at that, and I could do it in my head, and then I could get it down on paper. Now here's another thing I had, and it came in really handy back in the days when I was tutoring math. I had the ability to work really well with people with learning disabilities and other disabilities. I remember people would come to me and ask for other math levels than what I usually taught. I specialized in statistics. Some people would come to me and say, hey, so-and-so told me you're really good with people with dyslexia. I'm just doing some basic math or algebra or whatever. Can you help me? And I was sitting here before I decided to do this video. What were the gifts that I had? What was the talent that I had? And sometimes it's just patience. It's looking for ways to communicate, because folks with dyslexia, I had them teach me how to teach them. Like how would it work for you? Because sometimes they see things reverse, backwards. So I learned individuals' learning language to help them. I remember when I was working in the math lab at school, and I was over on the computing side. We had two different sides of the lab, and I was over in the computing side, and this woman came in who was in a wheelchair. She couldn't walk. She could barely talk. And I saw her come in and I was listening to her trying to talk to people. And I thought, how can she get help here? No one's going to understand her. I wasn't understanding her. And later that day, my boss came over to me, pulled me to the side, and he says, Don, no one here can help her. Can you try? Because I had this ability to work with very tough clients, people that had a really hard time learning. And I said, I really don't want to. And he says, please try it. Well, I did. And I was able to learn her language. And I could start to learn to understand her, because seriously, it was really difficult to understand because she had a hard time getting her words out. I was able to start listening to her in a way to where I can understand her questions and show her ways to do it. And it was pretty successful. So that was another talent. So again, what was some of the things I used for that is patience, learning their language. I'm not talking about, foreign languages. I'm talking about how people think and speak, and their learning style. And it came in really handy for me as, being a tutor, being successful at that, but also helping people. The last one I want to talk about is the way my mind works. Now, again, this is a gift. It wasn't something I learned. I didn't practice it, is being able to see the big picture of things. And I've always been like that. When I do things, I don't like the nitty gritty, the minutia of things. I like seeing the big picture. I remember my dad, when I was a little kid, we were making a tree house. Not my dad, just us kids. Probably the dumbest thing we ever did. But my dad said to me, and he kind of was critical about it, said, you're really good at getting other people to do things. And at the time, I thought that was an insult. And when I thought about it more, it's like, yeah, I like having the big picture, the image, what the treehouse is going to look like, where we're going to put it, things like that, and how we're going to play when we get in it, kind of a thing. I had all this fantasy in my head. But I got the other kids to nail boards together and things like that, and I sold my vision to them. Everybody thinks differently. Some people like the itty bitty stuff. They like the detail oriented. They're more detail oriented. I'm not. So anyhow, I hope that helps you thinking about what your gifts, your talents are. So here's your homework assignment. Now I'm going to be doing these videos, 4 of them, the next 4 days. One today, today's Monday. Do another one for tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday. I want you to think about what you do, what you've done in the past. And I don't care how small it is or how big it is. Even if you, like with my ability to know that someone's been home and I can't explain it. Even if you have one of those talents, write it down. I want you to list every single one as much as you can, okay? I want you to, after you listen, put it on a piece of paper. Don't put it on your phone. Don't put it on your computer screen. Piece of paper. And what I want you to do is take that piece of paper, because I want you to work on it. It's going to take some time. You may get most of them down within 10 minutes. But I want you to have that on your mirror, like on your bathroom when you're getting ready to go to work or getting ready to go to school. Look at it, look it over, because it may stimulate or remind you of other things that you have. Make it as complete as you can. Take it with you to work. Take it with you to school. Take it with you on the car. So when you're stopped in traffic or stopped at a signal, you can look down and see if you want to add anything. The more, the better. All right? So let's see, is there anything else? I think that's about it. Yes, that's about it. So that's all for now. List your talents, get it down on paper. At the end, I'll tell you why you want these lists. We'll get them all put together and make sense at that time. But at least you'll know and be reminded what your talents are, your gifts, what makes you special. All right? By the way, if we haven't met, I'm Donald Henderson. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Have a great day.